If she hadn't said those words that day, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have saved the school. I wouldn't have known what kindness really means. That's how he began when he stood before the entire school auditorium, now dressed in a sleek black suit, a far cry from the boy who once sat silently in the back of the classroom, unnoticed. But let's not rush to the ending, because the beginning is where it all truly matters. It was the first day of the new academic year at Crest Hill High, a modest school tucked away in a small, working-class town. The classrooms had peeling paint, the chairs squeaked, and the library had more dust than books. But what it lacked in glamour, it made up for in heart, at least in one classroom, where Miss Riley taught. Miss Riley wasn't the kind of teacher you forgot. She wasn't glamorous, didn't drive a fancy car, and didn't live in a grand home. But she remembered birthdays. She brought extra sandwiches for kids who didn't have lunch. And she always noticed the quiet ones. That morning, a new student sat in the farthest corner of her 9th grade classroom. He wore a faded hoodie pulled up over his head, his face barely visible. His name on the roster was Aiden Shaw, and he hadn't answered when she called on him, only nodded with downcast eyes. Other teachers might have ignored him. Might have written him off as a troubled kid or someone just passing through. But Miss Riley didn't believe in writing people off. During lunch, she saw him sitting alone under a tree behind the gym, slowly chewing on a single granola bar. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't reading. He just sat there, his backpack clutched tightly like it held his entire life inside it. She walked over. You know, the cafeteria might not be fancy, but their pizza bread is edible on Thursdays, she said, smiling gently. He didn't answer, only looked up for a second before lowering his gaze again. That's okay, she continued, sitting beside him. You don't have to talk. But you should know, someone's glad you're here. He blinked, stunned for a moment. I didn't think anyone would notice, he said quietly. I notice, she said simply. And when you're ready to talk, I'll listen. Then she stood, gave him a small smile, and walked away. It was a simple exchange. But for Aiden, it was everything. The weeks went by. Aiden remained quiet, barely participating in class. But Miss Riley kept smiling at him every morning, kept leaving small notes of encouragement on his desk, and always made sure to include him, gently, never forcefully, in classroom activities. Other students whispered. Some thought he was strange. Probably has a record, one boy muttered. He's got that foster kid vibe, another said. Aiden heard it all. And yet, somehow, Miss Riley's kindness anchored him. One rainy Friday afternoon, as the class was dismissed early due to flooding in the lower floors, Miss Riley offered him a ride home. He hesitated, then nodded. But instead of giving an address, he directed her to a small motel on the edge of town. This is where you live? She asked gently. For now, he said. She didn't pry. She only said, all right. You need anything, books, food, a winter coat, you let me know. Again, he was stunned. Not by the offer, but by the sincerity in her voice. People offered help all the time, but few meant it like she did. Months passed. The school faced budget cuts. There were rumors that it might close. The building was old, funding was tight, and the district had plans to replace it with a new tech-forward institution miles away. Miss Riley fought back. She started campaigns, wrote letters, organized fundraisers. Not because it affected her job, but because it affected her kids. Kids like Aiden, who didn't have a car to get to a faraway school. Kids who needed this school, this neighborhood. One cold February morning, Aiden finally spoke during class. Miss Riley had asked them to write an essay about someone who inspired them. When it was his turn, he stood slowly. His voice shook. I wrote about someone who doesn't know how much she's changed my life, he said. Someone who spoke kindly to me when I didn't deserve it. Who gave me dignity without asking for anything in return. Miss Riley, you gave me something I didn't have, hope. The room was silent. Even the most talkative student stared, stunned. She smiled, tears welling in her eyes. Thank you, Aiden. That means more than you know. But still, the school board pushed forward with the plan to shut down Cresthill. And then, everything changed. One morning, a line of black cars pulled into the school lot. Suited men stepped out, followed by a sharply dressed man in his 50s, Mr. Bernard Shaw, CEO of Shaw Enterprises, the largest investor in educational infrastructure in the state. The students were in awe. Teachers whispered. Miss Riley stood frozen. Then, from one of the cars, Aiden stepped out, not in his hoodie, but in a navy blue blazer, clean and confident. He walked up to the podium set up for the surprise assembly. My name is Aiden Shaw, he began, microphone in hand. You know me as a student here. But I'm also the son of Bernard Shaw. And today, I want to tell you a story. He recounted his time at Cresthill, the kindness he received, the quiet moments of compassion, the warmth in the cold. He told them how he had begged his father to let him experience public school without special treatment, to understand the real world, to find meaning. And I found it, he said. I found it in the words of a teacher who saw me. Not as a rich boy. Not as a silent kid. But as a human being. Then he turned to his father. This school doesn't need replacing. It needs saving. And we have the power to do that. Mr. Shaw nodded, visibly emotional. Cresthill High will not only remain open, he announced, but it will be fully renovated and funded by our foundation. The crowd erupted in applause. Miss Riley stood in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. Later, when the crowd had cleared, Aiden approached her. You saved me first, he said quietly. Now it's my turn. The school transformed in the months that followed, new books, new labs, new hope. But some things didn't change. Miss Riley still brought extra sandwiches. She still remembered birthdays. And she still looked out for the quiet ones in the back of the room. Because she knew now, more than ever, that sometimes, all it takes is a single kind word, to change the course of someone's life. That's the kind of power we all have, Aiden said at the dedication of the new Cresthill Library, now named after Miss Riley. You don't need $1 billion to change the world. You just need a little kindness, and the courage to share it. And in the crowd, students listened. Some smiled. Others cried. And somewhere, in the back of the room, another silent student felt seen for the very first time. Because kindness echoes. And in this little school, it started with a teacher, and changed everything.